Shalom, back again with another video. Before I begin this lesson, I want to say Kol Halal, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Recha, Kwadash. I want to give double honors to my elders and apostles who rule well, where I've learned this truth from. I want to say peace and salutations to you, Akim, you brothers, laboring, pushing his word out in all truth and in sincerity, offering up your bodies as a living sacrifice. I want to say shalom to you Israelite sisters that may be listening. I also want to say shalom to you Israelites that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. You may look like the other nations. However, your seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the chosen seed line. Shalom. So I wanted to basically start this lesson, just being out and about on my daily activities and, just seeing on social media, seeing a lot of, stuff in the world that just, it's just heartbreaking, like when you see your people and, you've been called, you've received, the word from the Lord, you see it as clear as day, right? And you anxiously want to go out and warn the people, your people, the Israelites, the ones that haven't woken up to the truth, and they cannot and will not accept it, right? They label you the enemy, like, you're teaching hate, and it's clear as day. Like if you can't see it, how bad this world has gotten, right? People are struggling to pay their bills, people are hurt, our people, especially the so-called black man and the so-called black woman, they're at odds with each other, and it doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down because we're both stubborn people, hard-headed people going at each other, right? Women are out of order, men acting like niggers. It breaks your heart when you look at how this world is, and you sort of imagine how the world is going to be when righteousness is reestablished in the earth, right? Now we understand that all of this is supposed to happen, right? Sometimes it gets a bit too much, it gets unbearable, but we have to, we have to keep on fighting, right? We can't give up, not when we're this close to the finish line, right? Of course, we're going to go through, troubles, Jacob's troubles, like on, knocking at the door, right? But we have to endure. I'm going to start in the book of Micah, chapter 2, verse 10. It says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest." Right? This is not our rest, Sometimes you just want to, like, man, let's just catch a break. But, hey, this is not our rest. We still have to endure, right? We have to keep fighting. We have to keep pushing. We have to keep trying to wake up as many of our people as we can, All we're required to do is go out and teach, right, as we've been commanded, right? And the Lord will bring the increase. And when the Lord is good and ready, then, hey, when the elect are sealed, Lord willing, I'll be of that number, and like-minded brothers, who are pushing this word out as well, or of that number. But until that time, we're gonna have to just keep fighting through it, It's tough, right? Verse 10, I'm going to read it from the top. It says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with the sword destruction." When you look at how bad this life is getting, sometimes it can crush you. And it's not only, destroy you like physically, like you die or whatever the case may be, but destroys you mentally, emotionally. It can even, destroy you spiritually in some aspects, but you got to have thick skin. You got to be, the Lord is looking for soldiers, right? So you got to stick in there. But, when you look around and you see how bad things have gotten, it can get tough at times, but you just got to keep in there. You got to stay strong, right? In the book of Ezekiel, I'm going to read chapter 3, verse 17. it even gives you an idea of, what the Lord has called us to do. It says, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. And that's our job. We have to be a watchman. Whenever we see these events taking place in the earth, we have to warn our people and filter it through the scriptures, whether they hear or whether they forbear, right? It says, therefore, hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. That's the Lord waking up his men, the mouthpiece, to give the warning, to look, that, the Lord's getting ready to visit this place. Judgment and destruction is coming, right? If you ain't getting your shit together, then you're going to get left out there, right? You see what happened during the time of Noah, when Noah built the ark, He was out there for years building that ark. And people were probably walking by him every day doing the exact same thing that they're doing now. They see us building this spiritual ark and they're thinking, why the hell are you building an ark in the middle of nowhere? It makes no sense. These guys are crazy, right? They weren't crazy when it started raining. The Lord sealed the ark and hey, they couldn't get in, Noah couldn't open it and the people all got flooded, right? Now, it's our job to go out there and warn people, right? If we didn't do our job, this is what it says in verse 18. It says, when I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life. That's the whole point, save life. That the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand, at your hand. So, that's pretty clear, right? When they die in their iniquity, they carry on in their sin, you don't warn them, and they die in their sin, then, their blood is on your hands, basically, right? But on the flip side of that, in verse 19, it says, yet if thou warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul, right? We've all got multitudes of sins, right? And we're trying, to keep the commandments to the best of our ability. We're trying to get some of that sin washed up off us, you know what I mean? And like I say, it's heartbreaking when, you speak to somebody, try and teach somebody, wake them up, warn them, and they just throw it in your face and call you a hate preacher, or, it gets tough sometimes, right? But it says, man, it says that we're going to go through these things, right? So I'm going to read in the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 2, right? Start from the top. It says, my son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation, right? Now that temptation can come in many forms, right? It can come in, your family may disown you. It could be, if you're a man, your woman leaves you, or just starts bugging out, and vice versa for a woman with a husband. He may switch up on you, start treating you differently. You know what I mean? It can come in a multitude of ways, right? It says, set thy heart aright and constantly endure. And that's what this walk is. We have to constantly endure these hardships, right? These frustrations, all of this stuff. We have to endure it. It says, and make not haste in a time of trouble. When we're going through it, because obviously we're going to go through it, Brothers and sisters out there can attest, you go through certain things in your life and you want to give up, right? You have to remember that this is not our arrest, right? We still have to keep pushing through it. We have to keep fighting, right? And not make haste in the time of trouble. Don't just throw in the towel when the times gets tough. It's about to get a lot worse, right? So you have to prepare your mind for the fact that you're going to go through a lot of difficult times, but you have to trust that the Lord has got you, right? Some things don't make sense to you, you know what I mean? You go through something and it doesn't make sense to you, and you think, how can I get out of this? And then all of a sudden, bang, you're better off than where you were before, right? Verse 3, it says, cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end. You see, the Lord has got us. We just have to put our faith and our trust in him and know that he's there, right? Even when it seems that, oh, he's left me on my own here on this. He hasn't. Trust me. The Lord is always there. Certain things don't make sense to you, but you have to trust the process. You have to trust the Lord's got you, right? It says, whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state, right? When you're going through it and you think, I can't do this, just hang in there. You know, it's tough. Trust me, it's tough. But you have to hang in there, right? It says, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. It says, believe in him, and he will help thee. Order thy way aright, and trust in him. That's the key, right? Believe in him and trust in him. Have faith. And you'll see the miracles, man. You'll see the wonders that the Lord does for you. Trust me. Right? Verse 7 says, ye that fear the Lord, wait for his mercy, and go not aside, lest ye fall. Right? It says, ye that fear the Lord, believe him, and your reward shall not fail. Do you understand? So, when I say trust in the Lord, when you go through these heartaches, these troubles, whatever you're going through in this life, you know, when your spirit is low, pray, right? Pray without ceasing. That's what the scriptures say, right? Now, I want to jump over to the book of Proverbs. We get a couple more scriptures and I'll close it up. This is Proverbs chapter 3. I'm going to read verse 5 on down. It says, trust in the Lord, Yahweh. Trust in Yahweh with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Right? So don't try to figure things out yourself. Go your own way. Leave it to the Lord, man. Just just keep praying. Fast if you have to, right? But pray without ceasing. It says, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Right? So you're not going to understand it because it won't make sense to you. But when you see the end result and you see how much you come out on top, you then start to understand the Lord have to have been helping you the whole time. And you just weren't aware. But he is there, trust me. Right? It says, be not wise in thine own eyes, fear Yahweh and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones. Honor Yahweh with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. That's pretty straightforward. Just honor the Lord in everything, every increase. Honor the Lord, right? Because the times that we're coming into is definitely going to be a time like no other, right? And we need the Lord, man. We need the Lord for everything, right? And this is where the faith kicks in. You want to start practicing, having faith and believing and trusting in the Lord that he's got you, right? Because we're going to need it in the times ahead, man. We're going to need it. This world is getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And it's going to keep getting tougher until the Lord comes back, Just when you think, oh, man, they done this now. They done signed this executive order and they've signed that executive order and they've done this now and they've changed this price and, these tariffs have gone up and this price and, you know what I mean? Like, you have to trust that the Lord is doing his thing, and remember that this punishment is for the wicked, right? So it's important that you be not a part of the wicked. You know what I mean? Like, you have to pray that the Lord is dealing with you, right? And the best way we can do that is to do as the Lord has commanded us to do, right? Because, there will come a time, and it even says in the scriptures, right? I believe it's in the book of Matthew chapter 10. I think it's verse 35. Yep. And this is red letters for Yahushua. So this is Matthew chapter 10, verse 35. It says, "For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household." Right? And again, this is where we're coming into. Like, you try to wake your people up, try to wake your family up, and they just they can't accept it. They can't hear it. They can't acknowledge it. They can't, they don't believe in it, right? And it's heartbreaking, and that's what inspired me to do this lesson, because it's heartbreaking when you're around people like that, and the truth as plain as day. It's as clear as day in your eyes, crystal clear, but they can't see it, and you have to come to that realization that, hey, they may not make it, and that's heartbreaking, right? But it says, in the scriptures, "He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." Right? So it's the Lord before all, right? If you're worried about your children, being a part of the wicked, that was their lot. It's and that's difficult. That's a difficult thing to accept. But you have to understand that, this is just the way it's written. Pray that you be, part of the one that the Lord has mercy on. And again, we seek the Lord. We don't know the Lord's ways, right? It says the Lord will have mercy on whom he'll have mercy, right? If he has mercy on you, maybe that can extend to your children, or to your to your loved ones. Who knows? I can't sort of give you the answers for that, but it's just one of those things where this walk that we're in is difficult, and the main point of this message is that we have to constantly endure, right? When you're going through them tough trials, just imagine it as the Lord is testing you, right? The Lord is seeing where your faith is, where your heart is, where your mind is. He's testing you, right? He's seeking that fine gold, right? And you're going through the fire, and that fire is the tough times that you're going through, right? But you just have to understand that you're strong. The Lord made you strong. The Lord built you strong. We're a strong people. It says one nation shall be stronger than the other. All the stuff that you've had to endure throughout your entire life, and you're still standing, you have to understand that you were built strong, right? So, I won't continue on, I'll end it here. I pray that this lesson was edifying and uplifting to anybody out there that's receiving it. And I pray that this lesson was edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. And it's on to the next one, Lord willing. Shalom.